One thing that we really help our clients with is establishing boundaries and expectations. So you may be able to be one of those entrepreneurs that works 15 hours a week, or you may be one that's working 50 hours a week. But what you need to do is know that number, know when you are available and when you're not available.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Perfectly Mentored. I'm your host, Jason Portnoy. On this episode, we have Jim and Jamie Sheils. They are the founders of the 18 Summers family education company that specializes in workshops, private consulting for entrepreneurs and professionals looking to strengthen their family lives while still succeeding in their business. You know, Jim was also motivated by what he saw as one of the most tragic challenges of modern life, which was the disconnection of busy entrepreneurs from their families. So he developed the Family Board Strategy, which is also a best-selling book, to help business owners bridge the gaps between themselves and their loved ones. This is a great episode. You're not going to want to miss this one. Jim, Jamie, welcome to the show. So good to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Jason, thanks for having us. Good to be here.
So for the listeners who aren't familiar with the two of you, why don't you give us a little bit of a background into exactly who you are and how you came up with 18 Summers?
All right.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Loaded question right out of the gate here.
You might have the better.
Bite it into chunks. I tend to get a little off to grandma's house with my emotional stories. But anyway, so we came together as a blended family and also blended backgrounds. So Jim's been an entrepreneur for 25 years.
Almost 25 years.
Almost 25 years. I've been in education 22 years. So he's done real estate deals and lots of entrepreneur type education, self-development. And I've started and run public and private Waldorf and Montessori schools. So we have these two very different, but also alternative backgrounds. When we met, he fell in love with not one person, but three. I had two boys that I had full custody of after removing us from a bad situation. So when we started to become a family, we combined our alternative educations and thought, surely there's a way to start deepening connection for this lost time that we had. You know, he got our boys at 5 and 7. And so that clock was a little bit different for him.
Yeah. And I was running two big businesses at the time. So, and then a third came along with the family education company, which we started because as we started to share our ups and downs and trial and errors that actually worked, that's how the Family Board Meeting Strategy was born, in 18 Summers the company was born, because we found, Jason, there was a ton of good stuff out there to be able to help you build your business and support you, but there was very little out there to help entrepreneurs keep their family life strong while they built their business, if that makes sense. There was no one really focusing on that
integration,
that integration. And entrepreneurs don't want to get a degree in family psychology, nor do I think they need one. Those are helpful for some careers and people, but how do you put things into action? How do we help grow the family as we grow the business? And that was what the 18 Summers message was about. And now here we are, 10 years into it, 4 kids ranging from age 4 to 17, lots of alternative education, lots of talks, workshops, retreats. Our friend Tim's story, that's how we met, because he just loved the fundamentals of what we were doing. And unfortunately, there's not a lot out there for entrepreneurs.
So just right off the bat, you said I had a busy household with 2 kids. I think you're the one with the busy household, not me.
It gets a little kooky, but it's fun.
It's part of the game though. But what we've learned, and what I'm sure we'll talk about today, if simplicity and rhythms can create more adventure, more love, more connection, not perfection. I wouldn't know how to teach perfection. We are not perfect. We have our ups, downs, arguments, setbacks, teen grumpiness, toddler meltdowns, just like any family. But there are certain rhythms and strategies and simplicity you can bring into the home that I think can make a lot of the difference.
So I want to start with the obvious question that I think a lot of the entrepreneurs, will have, or the business people will have, is that we think a lot of people assume entrepreneurship is about working less, living the dream life, yachts, private jets, parties, champagne, whatever it is. When in reality, I mean, we have the dream. Most entrepreneurs have that dream to work for themselves in order to spend more time with their family and live life on their own terms. But most of the time we end up working harder than we thought we would. and it actually takes away from family time. And entrepreneurship comes with a huge sacrifice, and most of the time it's the family that ends up being sacrificed there. I think everyone kind of wants to know, and myself included, is there really such thing as a work-life family balance?
Absolutely. One thing that we really help our clients with is establishing boundaries and expectations. So you may be able to be one of those entrepreneurs that works 15 hours a week, or you may be one that's working 50 hours a week. But what you need to do is know that number, know when you are available and when you're not available. The pandemic further complicated this situation because then everybody's home all the time, right? So it's easy to take an extra email, or it's easy to let the children run in when you're in the middle of something. And so you find that this like broken time, if you're not paying attention to it, maybe you feel like you're way too involved at home, or maybe you feel you're way too involved at work, but you're not really feeling balanced. And so what helps, and what we do in our family and encourage our clients to, is really set those boundaries and expectations. These are the hours in which I will be working. These are the hours which I'm not. When I'm in X room, I'm not available. When I'm in the living room, I don't have my laptop, so just kind of setting some things and then sticking to them, letting everyone in the home know what those expectations are. And maybe the other people setting their own expectations. Your children will be doing school from these hours. They will do it at the table. They will, and so just really establishing those things helps and everyone else around you what to expect. So no one's walking in on you in the middle of the call and then you have to get upset and then start a whole 4-day Kahoot, So that's what we suggest.
I find for myself, I had to pretty much disconnect from all social media from my phone, from all email from my phone. I had to go completely cold turkey and brought my phone, pretty much my smartphone, down to a dumb phone, because I would, especially working from home during this pandemic and then going upstairs to then go from work mode to dad mode to work mode to dad mode with no break in between. There was no disconnect, right? So I'd end early to go upstairs and put my kids down, but it's still kind of work mode for me. And I think the hard part is, and I'd love your advice on this, is that, we go upstairs, we if you don't have that disconnect, how could you separate that? Like, you just get off a bad client call, then you have to go upstairs and be a dad, right? And shake that out of your head and put everything aside. I mean, how do you balance that, especially during these times?
It's a great question. And what you want to avoid is, we call it half in parenting. You're trying to parent, but you're also taking a pretty heated text, possibly picking up a phone call and then stepping 3 feet to the side. And it's, entrepreneurship can be heated. Let's face it. That's where there's unclean lines. You feel like you're half into parenting, you're half into work. And that's where the lines get blurred and you feel like you're getting neither done. So just the fact you said you took a call downstairs, or like in the pandemic, out in your car or out in the backyard, and then take a few breaths and then come in, that's huge. Another thing, to have really clean lines. So it's not just between a call or a text. We encourage something called intermittent tech fasting. So, we've all heard of intermittent fasting. It's a newer health specialization where,
Yep.
you're not giving up eating, right? You're just very disciplined. I'm only going to eat between this time and this time. And it's good for weight maintenance, weight loss, muscle recovery, organ revitalization, right? We encourage people that they have to start to have times of complete and total unavailability. Even if you're working 60 plus hours a week, you can have times of complete and unavailability. And what Jamie and I normally started with people in the pandemic was the dinner time challenge. So we say, look, we got to get back to simple rhythms, because 60 years ago, the average dinner time was 90 minutes. And as of 2017, it was 12 minutes. That's a big difference. We're all rushing off to things. So we said, what if we can go to a 1 hour, try to have it at the same time every day, intermittent tech fast for the entire family? That could be you, your wife, your teens. Everyone is off electronics for an hour a day, right around dinner. What we found is, at first, you're not just staring at each other. You can do your own things, but we're all off electronics. But there seems to be a decompression that occurs. There seems to be more conversation. We started to plan more adventures, get to the beach more. And if you save that one sacred hour, that's when you can start to have conversation, not that interruption. Because the problem of what we try to do, Jason, we try to take a quick text and then go right back to loving like your 2.5-year-old. they notice. I have a story where I was getting on the trampoline with my little one, Maggie. She was 5, and I promised her trampoline time. And I got on, and that dreaded I was supposed to leave my phone in the car. I looked at it. It was a real estate deal where someone screwed something up. I was really furious. I'm swearing under my breath. I'm not on the trampoline at this point, right? I'm working it out. And I'll never forget, I looked down at her, trying to fake it like we all do. And she goes, "Daddy, why are you so mad at me?"
Wow.
And so it's like dagger through the heart. So intermittent tech fasting for all of us, especially me being the ADD entrepreneur, especially Jamie has more grounding, but it's for all of us. We start with that dinner time challenge, 1 hour a day, start with an intermittent fast. And once you start to get that into rhythm, you'll probably be able to do it more times of the day as well.
Crazy for me, it was when my son one time took a toy phone. He's like, "Look, I'm daddy, I'm daddy, I'm daddy." And he was walking around with to his ear. I'm like, "Really? Am I that bad?" And my wife's like, "Yeah, you're that bad." I'm like, all right, we got it.
We need our wives to tell us that sometimes, I'll tell you.
Yeah. So I guess that leads to, a question I have is, we could be blind sometimes, especially as entrepreneurs, and we're focused in 2 different worlds. So how do you even know if like the business growth you're having, the success you're having is actually hurting your family life?
Oh, so there's so many this is a great question, because I think, if only we could have like that daily checklist of like, okay, am I winning here? Am I winning here? Really, one thing that helps you, that we really guide our clients on, is knowing your core values and then keeping aligned with them, and also those boundaries and expectations, setting things in place and sticking to them. So just making sure that you're honoring the things in which you've put in place. If you're not, you're not going to feel good inside, right? If family time is one of your core values, and your calendar is more filled with work than with family time, you're going to know, I might be winning over here and I might be sliding over there. And so it's one of those things that as you develop your core values with your spouse, or if you have older children, you can develop your core values as a family together, each of you discussing what matters to you, having that buy-in, and then sticking to those. Same thing with rhythms, whether it's like Jim was talking about, you choose the hour out of the day that you're available, that the tech is put down. And then if you happen to be on your phone during that hour, you're going to know. And even if you're not like, you're like, oh, it's just an hour, but inside you, like that intuition, that gut feeling is going to be like, oh shit, I'm not keeping this promise. And so there will be enough times that you feel like, oh shit, I'm not keeping this promise, that you know, because you've now set things in place. You have some family values that you've bought into. You've set some rhythms, such as date night. If you're not making date night with your wife, I promise you, one of you is going to start to have a problem, if not both of you. So there are things, we like to pretend like, oh, well, how do we know if we're not doing good at home? I think
Fair enough. I guess you're right. I think sometimes I'm blind, like just like I was blind to being on my phone as much, right? Like I think sometimes, you always. Look, you always hear about it, right? The couple that ends up divorced and one of them's blindsided because they didn't see all the little things add up, right? So I'm just trying to figure out, is there a way for people who are listening to sit there and say, just like in business, we have success metrics, right? You can't fix what you don't measure. So is there a way for, I guess, I know a lot of great business people who are horrible parents or horrible spouses. And I also know a lot of great ones who treat their family as a business, meaning they work on their family just as much as they work on their business. So I guess, what are those metrics and how can we serve our family a little bit better?
I can give you a couple real quick. First, if you've I love to bring certain principles from business to the home and certain principles from home that I learned like through Montessori and that to the business. Then there's ones that absolutely don't work. I'll give you one that doesn't work, the art of delegation. Man, we learn about the art of delegation for entrepreneurship, and it is crucial to take that next growth phase. You cannot not delegate and grow. I don't think so. At least I wasn't with my businesses. But what I learned is art of delegation, we get used to it in the business world, and then we go home and we try it. And sadly, we're good at it. And then all of a sudden we delegate ourselves out of family life to a spouse, to a grandparent, to an older sibling, to a nanny. And then all of a sudden you're feeling guilty, depressed, disconnected, kind of like a stranger. And it's because this principle that helped you at work is actually, you cleverly used it at home, but it didn't do you any good. So that's something you have to be careful about. Have you delegated yourself completely out of family life? because you want some of that time. You want to be up in the middle of the night with your little guy, like you said. Like you want to have that space. They want to play with you, not with the nanny. And that's something I think you have to remember. A second thing, especially pandemic wise, we have a bad habit as entrepreneurs to elevate our own issues and discount everyone else's. Don't you realize I'm growing the business? I'm running 2 businesses. We just got another mortgage for that house and a new car. And you elevate your own and discounted what everyone else was going through. I started to do that in the beginning of the pandemic. I'm proud to say I turned that. And then we helped a lot of other entrepreneurs that were doing that to their family. But when we've seen some fall apart families, sadly, over the last year, one of the nucleus causes, like core causes, was they discounted what everyone else was going through. Yeah. And I think as entrepreneurs, we're in a big fight sometimes, but doesn't mean that our spouse isn't going through, their own traumas or challenges, or our kids, and to discount that really causes separation. So those are 2 things to watch for.
So I want to ask you a little bit about the family boardroom in a second, but I'm just curious. So the 2 of you are in business together, right? So there is no separation of a bad work day to like back to family. Like there's no like one of you had a great day, one of you had a bad day. Like how do you balance that of working together, and then you guys could butt heads maybe a little bit at work or disagree on something at work, and then go put on the united front in front of the family?
What's great is that it did take us a couple of years to find our way. So in the beginning, I was admin as well as social media as well. I filled a lot of the roles because he's an incredible speaker. And so that was his role. And there was no way I was getting in front of a crowd. Like that was our roles, but then I'm doing all of this managerial and admin stuff. And that's not my strong suit, to be somebody's like runner, and so it created a lot of tension and it wasn't sexy. Do you know what I mean? Like there was no way that I'm like, I'm so glad I got to book that for you today. Come here. It just was weird and not good. And so we realized, again, the art of delegation. We had to hire the person to do the things I didn't want to do and that kept us in conflict. And so about 5 years ago, we brought on this great person, and she's been with us ever since. And moving that away elevated me into more content creation. It elevated me to be able to, we started speaking together. It elevated me, and so it just kind of changed the whole dynamic to where we then became equal. Because before, even though we were still equal, it didn't feel that way if I'm doing his dirty work, if that makes sense. And so just really finding, if you work together, being in a space in which you can delegate all of the things that is not your thing. So I love to write. I love to content create and direct. Jim loves to write and speak. And those are the only things that the 2 of us do. Everything else we delegate. And so then when we're doing it, we actually feel better about ourselves because we're not putting on something that isn't us. We're not in conflict because we're just in creation mode. And so it makes it a lot easier to work together. Now, of course, there's tension. Of course, there's moodiness. There's days in which one of us has to flake and run out and do something else. But I think after all of these years, we've found that cadence to think, 80 to 90% of the time we show up full on. The rest of the time we have to believe the best of one another and give that benefit of the doubt. And that's at home or in work.
I love that answer. And I'm curious, do you guys involve the family in the business? Like you have conversations about what you guys do, how the business is going, how like anything about that, or do you keep your business separate from the kids?
I believe it's funny. We have a whole thing on this. So first of all, there's certain businesses, because we have a family education company and 2 real estate companies. My one real estate company that involves a lot of investors and construction, and I like to try to keep Jamie out of it, with the exception every Thursday afternoon we meet with our CFO. I want her to understand the money, the numbers, so she can input, be in the know. Sometimes spouses feel so unaware. They don't know what's happening, and that scares them. And the entrepreneur is going fire red, fire red.
Well, they don't get to make decisions. I mean, it's been a game changer for us that I guess, again, about 4 or 5 years ago, I stepped into also managing, being in that role, and that it really helped give that clear picture.
But for the most part, we don't want Jamie in the real estate business. We have a real estate portfolio that's ours, and she helps a lot with that, with a lot of the interior decorating and
Rehabs
design,
and stuff.
but our bigger real estate investment company, that's my job. So I don't want her in it, but I want her to know what's going on with it, and to be in the know on the numbers once a week. I discussed that with my older teens. Our little ones are starting to get on. I don't believe that you should ever pressure a child into your business. I think that is one of the worst things in history we've seen entrepreneurs do. I refuse to do it. Curiosity kills the cat. In the last year, our boys have come with their friends and said, will you tell us more about what you're doing?
Very interested.
So I'll take them to a new duplex.
Yeah, real estate investing sexy, right? Like it's like, yeah, tell us how to own a bunch of real estate.
Yeah, and so it's got a vibe to it, and so they've asked. So I've started to actually, with especially my oldest who's 17, I've started to have, like last year I had the money talk with them. So I actually sat in my office, I whiteboarded, showed him basically my career, how I made most of my money, how I almost went bankrupt in 2008, how I rebuilt it, the things, our investments, what makes us money, what's lost us money. I laid it all out, and people were like, you showed your son all of your financials? I said, yeah. I made it clear to him that this is something I built. It's not something we loosely talk about. But I want you to understand it because no one talked to me about this. And also, our money is tied to certain core values. And if you decide to break those core values, you have freedom of choice. I'll love you either way. But I'm just letting you know, you'll get nothing. Like for addiction, my kids know if they take that path, I will love them, but I will not enable or support them. Just won't do it. So we try to tell stories, share a little bit of things without saying you need to come and be part of the business. It's more of a curiosity thing. And now they've been asking more. Hey, can we go by that property with you? Can we do that? Or our retreats. Hey, we'll help at the retreats. Could we help run this part of the retreat and that? So it's kind of curiosity killed the cat, but we do have a very open conversation. But again, we try to have, I have a very clear position in our real estate business. Jamie has a very clear thing in our family education business, and that helps a lot.
It's so funny because that goes against like all old school mentality, which was the wife stays separate from the business, the kids stay separate from the business is the business. No one sees those numbers except for me, and I don't share it to anyone.
Well, and that's the thing. And they say the number one reason for divorce is financial issues.
Yep.
I don't know if it's necessarily because there wasn't enough money. I think that sometimes there was control over the money or almost
lack of transparency.
Lack of transparency, not involvement. People are committed to what they're involved in. So just to be aware and be in the know, I think relaxes so many unnecessary mental movies and fears that might not even need to be there.
And
or
spouses
even
have great ideas. I mean,
I agree.
Being able to come
Jamie's
to the
had
table
lots of
too.
things to look. Yeah, it's a mastermind, right? We talk about the mastermind. So every Thursday we mastermind with our CFO. I want Jamie's input. I have a different skill set in it, but there's angles that she can get in her question that I can't see. So it's been really good for us to have that. And I definitely encourage more spouses. If you're the one entrepreneur, like you said, kind of guarding, sometimes they just want to be in the know and they might be able to support you. Not be your CFO. We have a CFO, but mastermind with you and just sharing that in the know is huge.
Just talk to me a little bit about the concept of the family boardroom. How'd that come into play? So what is it and how did it come into play?
It was brought out, it was born out of, just as we told you, coming together as a family. And so that first Christmas, Jim created coupons, Jim coupons, Jim Day coupons. and it turned into, it was like, he's literally wrote it down on a piece of paper, wrapped it up and gave it to the children. They were like, wow, what's this? And it started, and it was kind of that grassroots base for the family board meeting strategy. And what was really beautiful about it is as he kept doing these with the boys and their bond kept growing stronger and stronger. And we would go to events and different places and people would say, wow, how are you connecting so fastly? Or, oh gosh, I didn't realize you guys are a blended family. Tell us what you're doing. And the more we shared, the more the framework took space and took shape. I'll let Jim give you all that. But the more that it took shape, and then the more people were saying, well, will you come speak on that? You should write a book on that. And we thought, oh, this is so crazy. There's this piece of paper, Jim Days. And it totally developed into the thing because it really made such a huge difference in our life. And it pulled my boys from such a lower frequency into, I really think, their best selves because they got that one-on-one time.
So what is it exactly? So the Jim Day coupons, what do they get? Because when I think of family boardroom, I think of it like the family sits around and discusses the business and the money and whatnot.
Yeah. So we have something called so the book talks about rhythms, the power of simple rhythms, date night, family meeting every Sunday where we just say, hey, what was good this week? What could we improve? What's going on next week? Literally that light. But I love the concept of a board meeting because for, most companies, it was every 90 days, you get together, reunite the team and look ahead to the next 90 days. I was like, I'm going to start doing that with my kids. So every 90 days, every quarter, I have a day with each of my children. And there's only 3 principles to it: one-on-one, intermittent tech fasting, and it's a planned day of their choice with time to talk at the end. That's a very simple strategy that most entrepreneurs can understand. They get the concept, they've put to practice. Now we have people alongside us using it for a decade, and it's changed the relationship they have with their children.
So what's the talk around at the end of the day? Just what's going on in your life?
Yeah, it's funny. It's hard to conceptualize right now, but let me tell you, once you've turned off your phone and you're one-on-one, see, the one-to-one principle is something that rarely happens. And now with your 2 little ones being so close in age, starting now, you want to separate the parts to strengthen the whole. That strengthens the family to have one-on-one time with the individual pieces. And once you get that one-on-one FaceTime, no distractions, no siblings, not even your spouse, no work partners, no other friends,
No phones.
the phone's off, they've planned the day. Decompression occurs. I talk about that in the book, where your guard starts to come down. We all have our guard up. There's more open communication. There's more of a chance to give an authentic compliment or a sincere apology. And for me, with my oldest, who had, he had been through a tough go. Jamie stood up for herself, got out of a very bad marriage, took good care of these boys, but there was trust issues. And my oldest son, the first year when I came into his life, he was close to failing school. He suffered every night he was put on the spectrum for autism, and he suffered every night from night terrors. And that was really hard, but I had a feeling that he just needed to be loved and appreciated. This was not something to delegate out. It wasn't therapy or medication that was going to change this. And him and I started to spend one-on-one days. And each of those days in that first year was very, very inspiring. The conversations, it started small and then it grew. And by the end of that first year, he went from failing to becoming the most improved student in the 3rd grade, and he got this award for it. They retracted the diagnosis of autism, and within a year, his night terrors were gone. So, these principles that we talk about, we're going, how did this work? That's what the book talks about. The one-to-one principle, the importance of, yes, using technology, but having times of complete and total unavailability and letting your children design the day and go all in. Then they'll open up, then they'll have the conversation. Then you'll learn more about their passions and talents. And that's what the family board meeting strategy is all about.
I love that. And, I'm curious to hear some more of the rhythms that you talk about that could help, because you listed a couple, but I'd love to hear some more of those.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. Well, he mentioned family meeting, every Sunday to get together and, come together. It doesn't have to be the 16-point, questionnaire of the week. It's just, we do a couple of simple questions. What was the highlight of your week? What was either weird or a challenging moment? What do you have coming up this week and how can we help? So it's kind of just getting together and us all having an opportunity, in case we haven't at any other time in the week, to say, this was really great for me. And it's a good time to be able to congratulate each other, or this was really hard for me. And it's a good way to really be there and share that with one another. And then too, it's good for us to remind the children, hey, we're traveling this week, or dad will be gone one day, or Alden has a fishing tournament or whatever it may be, but just so that everyone in the home really knows what to expect. Because even if you have a calendar hanging on the wall, not everybody looks at that, or they don't speak the same organized language that maybe 3 out of the 4 of you in the house do, or however that may be. But really getting together as a team and acknowledging, here's where we are for this week. We do a lot of things in those 90-day increments. So family board meeting, we do a board meeting for each of the children every 90 days. So again, that's one-on-one. So you have 2 children. It makes it easy with you and your spouse, because then you just switch, you each have one day you have one and one day you have the next one. As you have more children, it gets a little trickier, but so we do that. We also do an overnight every 90 days alone, just the 2 of us. And we mostly stay in bed, have room service, and watch shows that we can't watch with children. So we drink good wine and eat the extra dessert in bed. But no, really, but just to take that time to be not just one-on-one with our children, but one-on-one with each other.
If you don't have kids, that sounds like the worst like vacation or the worst time away. As someone with 2 little kids, I'm sitting there going, wow, that's amazing. That sounds incredible.
It really is. It really is. And it's needed. It decompresses you. You know, you love your kids, but you need a one night away reminds you, gosh, it's so quiet. This feels nice. And you're more ready to step back in. You know what I mean? It's a re-energizing.
It's a reminder as to why you're together, and a reminder that you would miss those little crazy people.
Yeah. And the good thing about these rhythms is that you don't have to have too many. Mm-hmm. It's not like you need to put 27 rhythms into your family. No, we're talking Sunday family meeting. Once a quarter, I spend a day with each of our children. Every week, Wednesdays, 5:30 to 8:30 is date night. That's a huge one everyone overlooks. If you're not dating your spouse while you're building a business, that gets really, really dangerous. Make it the same day, same night.
Or it could be, if you have little ones, it could be Saturday afternoons, 11 to 3, or whatever you're able to do. But
if you put that on the schedule every week, I think that's important. And then we do an overnight and so those are some starter ones. And you'd be amazed if some people just put those into effect along. And if you want a daily one, the dinner time challenge. That's a great one to start with. 1 hour, everyone's off. Try to start to eat dinner together at least 5 days a week again, and don't rush off in 7 minutes to check a thread that's not that important. Yeah. So that's a good starting one.
I want to talk about the education system for a second, because as someone who's gone through pretty much the entire school system himself, I pretty much had to unlearn everything I learned from school in order to go the path I'm on. I think the school system is awful. This is my opinion, for creating anything but professionals, doctors, lawyers, or things like that. But supposing, we need to send our kids to school, how do we teach our kids the important lessons that they'll never learn in school? Things like personal finance, sales. I mean, you talked about bringing your son in and showing him how you made your money, things like that, investing in so many, much more usable skills that they'll never teach in school.
Yeah, it's so important because, like you said, it is important I want my doctors to have gone to school. Yeah. I also want them to have some, well-applied knowledge, like you're talking about. So I want my doctors to go to school, but I also want them to know everything else too, because so much of what we do in life has to be intuitive, right? So whether it's making decisions about your family, is this the right way to go or not the right way to go? You can't learn that in school, but you can learn that by learning about yourself, by learning about your core values, by learning how to communicate with your spouse and with your children and with other people that you're dealing with. And so really one thing, again, Jim and I are in different camps. I'm a little more early education, Jim's a little more later, but for me, starting at an early age, we include our children in pretty much everything. If we're going and rehabbing a house, the children come and we take pictures and we talk about, what could we do here or here? Or, we're in the yard and they help plant the flowers. We go to the farmer's market. We talk about why it's important to buy directly from farmers, or why it's important to not use pesticides, or you know what I mean? Like
feeding the dog. It gets messy, but they were helping since 2 years old.
Helping to chop for dinner, helping to do all of the things that teaches them that they are part of something bigger. They're very important and integral in everything that we do. And here are all the steps to that. And again, it gets messy. Sometimes it's not fun, but it's responsibility. It's consideration of others. It's teaching empathy, at that young age. And then even every lesson builds on the next one, right? So even with our little toddlers that maybe want to watch a show, they get, a cup at the beginning of the week with 5 coins. Each coin represents 30 minutes for a television show. And so then they have to budget. What's great is our 2 older boys, as they got up in the ranks, one of them is a saver. And so he'd save all of his coins to watch a movie, whereas the other one would spend his coins and then bribe his brother to then give him his coins. And so the thing is you might not think this has to do with life, but I tell you what, these boys, we have continued 10 years later to see these patterns play out in the way in which they spend money or save money, and how clever they are at playing off of other people, to do these things. But I know you have more big kid stuff.
Yeah. I would just say, so you brought up a doctor, which is a great one, or you did. And a doctor when we were kids is like, be a doctor. And that's great. I mean, I appreciate my doctors for sure. But I always say the doctor is one specialized skill, right? It's one specialized skill. And we made that out to be the NYB all. But what if you're a doctor who's uncomfortable in his own skin, terrible with money, and his relationships are in the toilet?
Right. Great example.
And those are the things that concerns me, because I don't care if my kids are the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. There are certain skills I've identified from the toughest times I've gone through. And I did this exercise about a decade ago now, interviewing tons of entrepreneurs, the toughest times in their life. And there was a series of about 7 things that we all shared that we went through. And school did nothing to prepare me for those. So I didn't want to, but those helped make me who I was too. So I didn't want my kids to not face any hard times, but I wanted them to be better prepared for the ones they faced. So based off that, we actually created our own matrix of education. You probably read about it. So I'm sure that's why you asked the question. And it's a simple thing. By the 6th grade, core curriculum for our children is personal development, financial intelligence, and relationship skills. Because when you have those 3 things, I believe no matter what you become, because I don't know what that one specialized skill is going to be, an ad agency, a real estate investor, a school owner, whatever it is. For personal and professional happiness, though, I think you need those 3 skills: personal development, financial intelligence, relationship skills on both sides. So, but somehow those have slipped through the cracks. They're not even enhancement curriculum most of the time, let alone core curriculum. So I've said to my kids, I will always tell you bad jokes, but I won't lie to you. These are the 3 buckets that matter. And we're going to try to get you lessons in them for the next 10 years so that I think you have an unfair advantage that we didn't have when we left the house at that age.
I love that. I'm a big believer that the best investment you can make is one in yourself. So, I mean, there's so much knowledge I have now that I wish I knew when I was younger, that I wish I had, just growing up, just going through things. And I think that's, every kid wants to be a grown up, and every grown up wants to go back to being a kid in order to have those things. So I think that's the issue that's going on. With 18 summers, I love what you're doing, but part of me feels a little bit sad from it that you only have 18 summers. I don't get happy hearing that. I get sad. I want more than that. So talk to me about the concept of why we only have 18 summers with our kids.
You go ahead. We're both have the same thought, right? At the same time.
It's supposed to be an encouragement. So not a discouragement, but it's supposed to encourage you, because it does. It immediately, you hear that and you think you do a math equation in your head right away. Right. And so the idea of
my daughter grew out of one of her pajamas, and I was like, oh man, she's becoming too big. It's growing up. And now you're telling me 18 summers? Like, wow.
Wait till they're taller than you.
I would love nothing more for them to be taller than me. So I'm for it.
But yeah, just the idea that 85% of the time that you spend with your children will happen before that 18th year. And really, if you cultivate and spend that time wisely in those first 18 years together, of course, they're going to keep coming back, but it really increases that opportunity if you bring the mindfulness and the awareness into making the most of the time you do have. So like we talked about earlier, whether you work 15 hours or 50 hours, if you're intentional in the time that you spend with your family, your spouse, and your children, just make the most of whatever time it is, whether you've got 5 summers left, 15 summers left, 5 hours a week, 50 hours a week, whatever that happens to be, start somewhere and make the most of it. So the 18 summers is really just supposed to be that reminder, that encouragement, and that nostalgia of like, wow, summer is awesome. And we have 18 of them to really play them up. We're trying to juice all of the rest of our son will be 18 this summer, actually. And we're like, I think we can maybe get 2 more summers out of him. And so, but really, if we just keep cultivating the type of relationship that we want to have lifelong.
You're not allowed doing that unless you're ready to change the name to 20 summers, right? You're done with 18.
People say, no, it's actually 22 summers because
him in on the slide.
Yeah, so
he's only this tall, not this tall.
We said, we'll probably keep it and we'll have exception. But I think like you kind of hit on it, it doesn't make you feel good, but that's a good thing. And the reason why is we've all been taught this entrepreneurial lie where I love hustle. I am the last person to take away ambition. But whoever taught the look, put your head down for the next 5 to 10 years, your family will understand, and then it's all going to be worth it. That is a blatant lie, and it has destroyed more families than you can see. And that's why with setting rhythms, having these simple math equations, you can make space all along the way. It's anyone who tells you otherwise, it's total bullshit, or they've made that choice. And we have some busy times, but we keep those rhythms, and I keep that math equation in my head. And I've said no to some work things and yes to some adventures. And guess what? I have not regretted a single one, and work seemed to keep going and getting better. In fact, I think it prevents burnout. And so that's what we're trying to help with that 18 summers. Don't burn yourself out, and don't miss this. The years are not all created equal. A mentor of mine used to say that. And he was talking about these pivotal years when the kids will be with you and not grown up in a way.
So I've listened to everything you both said, and I totally love it, on board and agree with it. I guess I come back to that. There's only 24 hours in a day, right? So you have business owners or business people who are listening or watching this right now that need to focus on growing their business, right? But they want to make sure they're there for the family. They want to sacrifice the family. How is it possible to give the same, I guess, focused energy and attention that you're giving your growing business to your family when, in fact, we only have 24 hours in a day, and most of that's actually spent at work?
Delegate. Well, number one, delegate those things that don't absolutely need you. So make sure that you are showing up for the things you have to show up for, whether it's at home or at work. So if you delegate properly at work, hopefully you don't have to be there an extended period of time, right? Delegate what you can and show up for the things that nobody else could do, because that's your specialized skill. Same thing for you as a father. When you come home, delegate the groceries, delegate the cleaning, delegate the, pressure washing of the outside. Don't delegate playing with your kids. Don't delegate bedtime stories. Don't delegate soccer games. So there are things in which I know there's no way you don't already have the list going in your head. Like, yeah, I could probably hand that off. Okay. Yeah, I better pull myself together for this one. And so really delegating where you can, and not delegating where it's only your specialized time. And then setting a very few rhythms into place. Again, date night, with your spouse is going to be huge. And then those set days with your children. So even if you know ahead of time, if you set that calendar for the very few things that you can show up for, and that's the one thing that we always talk about, 18 summers, make the most of what you have, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, but stay consistent. Let everyone in your family know, just like we talked about, boundaries and expectations. When will you show up? And that way, when you're showing up fully. That may only be an hour out of those 24 hours, but give it your all,
Well, and that's the key, what she said, show up fully. This half in parenting, I mean, we're test subjects. Everything I talk about is because I've messed it up.
Failed.
And what I think we say is, yeah, there's 24 hours in a day, but we actually think, you know what? If I can take this text while I'm playing with my kids, and then do this in this call while I'm at the soccer game, it's going to add 35 hours in a day. Well, no, actually you're going to feel like neither happened. So it's going to feel like there was only 15 hours in the day. Mm-hmm. So what I've learned is the more I can say, I'm on the scooters with my kids right now, my phone is not invited. That's huge. I'm on date night right now, 5:30 to 8:30. No calls, no threads, no emails are invited. When you start to have that clear, you're not half in, you're all in, 24 hours in a day seems a lot longer and a lot more effective.
I love it. I want to ask the two of you something. How do you guys work on your mindset? Because you seem both very upbeat, positive people, looking at life in a really positive and good way that most people don't. And especially as spouses working together in business, you're both growing your business. You're both growing the business. How do you? What do you guys do in order to invest in your mindset? Is that something that you focus on? Is that something that's important to you?
Very important. I'm huge in mindset. And I think that, again, there's no perfect family. I want to make clear, I have low points. I have low times. Like, how am I going to do this? Do I deserve this? How am I going to handle this? So it's not like, like I think it was Zig Ziglar had said, mindset is a constant thing, like showering. You don't just do it once, or you're going to kind of start getting a little smelly.
Start to stink.
Yeah. And so it's a constant thing. And there's times, I think a friend of ours once said it's 90-10. There's times where I'm 90% up and Jamie might only be 10%. And there's times I'm only at 10% and Jamie's at 90%. So sometimes you're pulling the other or pulling up or down, but it's meditation. You know, we're open spiritually, so we enjoy to pray together. That's just our thing. We're not deeply religious, but we're very spiritual, and we're constantly trying to feed ourselves reminders. And one of the things I think is good, where it's like, gosh, you had a tough week, but did you notice 3 of your oldest friends called you this week? Jamie said it to me just last week. And so we kind of have that core value that we're wanting to strengthen it. And we try to hand observations or little challenges to the other, which I think helps a lot.
Yeah, like Jim says, I personally love, we, like you said, we do pray together. We also do yoga together, mostly Kundalini, which kind of rocked my world a few years ago, helped move through some trauma, even though I was processing it mentally and emotionally. Kundalini really helped me physically, I think, move some of that through. And so, you know, we do a range of things for mindset. We also play mantras at night as we sleep for the house and some of stuff like that, but really nourishing our bodies with good food, being mindful of that. And then just little adjustments along the way, because like Jim says, it's like showering, you know, or putting on deodorant. You know, there's like all this armor that you need to put on, because it's not just your mind, it's your feet. Where are they going? You know, it's your heart. What's it feeling? It's your body. What's it ingesting? There's so many things. And also, what are you exposing yourself to? And so we've had to become super mindful. We're not on social media very often. And when we are, it's super intentional, because that, you know, we used to hear when we were younger, or I did, garbage in, garbage out, right? And so you really have to think that about everything that you do, from the food that you eat to the things that you're subjecting your eyes and your ears to. And so really that's a huge part of mindset, is not consuming and indulging in things unless I choose it.
I think that's well said, and I agree with that. I think the more garbage you bring in, it affects anything that you had already in there that was positive. So I'm a big believer in that. I think you both nailed something in this entire interview, call it an interview or discussion or conversation, is that a relationship with your family, your kids, is not an option. It's actually essential, super, super important. I think that's a huge takeaway from all this. I'm not saying that most people believe it's an option, but that I think people don't realize how much work that they actually have to focus on and actually intentionally put that work in. So I want to thank you so much for both of you coming on and sharing with the listeners your story, your advice. And for those listeners who want to learn more about about 18 Summers, or about the two of you, or get in touch with the two of you, how can they reach out?
18summers.com, just the number 18summers.com is where you can find everything from our adventure blog to our own podcast, the 18 Summers Show, that we do. And Instagram is our most active social media account. So 18 Summers Tribe on there. And we love to hear from people. We personally answer every, you know, email or DM, because we love getting to hear from people and knowing what others are dealing with, and being able to encourage and walk this together, because really we're all going to experience the same things, just at different times.
Awesome. Jamie, Jim, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.